Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast. Today, the guest we have with us is a young researcher. Her name is Meghana Sangle. She's also my sister. She is doing her bachelor's and master's in science at the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, IISER Mohali. Among various other things, one thing she's interested is in ecology. She has done her internship in elephant ecology and conservation at the Indian Institute of Science here in Bangalore. And at IISER, she's also an avid birder, studying birds, their migration patterns, collecting data. So, Meghna, why don't you tell us more about yourself on that front?
Hi. So I have worked as an intern in an Asian elephant lab at IISc that worked in collaboration with an NGO, FERAL. And we studied the patterns of elephant movements across the Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary and Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Uh, like the project I worked on was studying how the elephants are moving altitudinally upwards as we face climate change. And I've also studied how bird home ranges are shifting altitudinally as the climate is changing.
Right. Thanks, Meghna. And like not just as a young researcher, but I believe you're also a budding, a policy analyst who wish to understand the intersection of all these aspects with public policy. Why do you think it is even important, to talk about wildlife and biodiversity conservation when we are talking about public policy? What are your thoughts on that?
So, like having a robust policy on wildlife and conservation is essential for preserving ecosystems in the long run because they help in supporting local livelihoods and ensure long-term sustainability of resources, which is very essential for our national progress. So, with increasing anthropogenic pressures, strong policies backed by proper enforcement and community involvement, in addition to scientific research, is very important. These conservation policies help preserve the natural capital like the forests, rivers, wetlands, which are very essential to the people living near those, and their ecosystem services, which fuel economic and social growth. So it is imperative to balance infrastructure and industrial growth with these ecological safeguards
Right,
in measure.
right. And you know what? Nowadays, like it's often overlooked, but when I think of it, one important aspect is also biosecurity. Like the COVID pandemic actually, showed us the stark reality that as biological beings, all it takes is, maybe one event for the species to be, entirely infected in a matter of days. So biosecurity is an important concern, food security, how these, aspects very much very innate biological realities intersect with our economic activities and how we treat our forest ecosystems. So like interesting ideas on that front. Would you like to share what are some policies or projects that currently the government, central government or the state government is undertaking for wildlife conservation and yeah, ecological conservation.
Right. So the project that I was working in was a part of Project Elephant, which recently, like in 2023, it was integrated with Project Tiger. Since both these species are keystone species and their habitats overlap a lot, like especially in the southern Indian region. So, the project I was working with was Project Elephant, and there's another program called Frontier Elephant Program. So, and a lot of these wildlife conservation programs are in collaboration with the Wildlife Institute of India and IISc, NIAS.
What were some of your experiences like, when you participated in these programs? Like, what are the conservation activities that takes place? Like, I would like to hear from you, from your own experiences. How is technology an enabler, in implementing some of these policies? Because at the end of it, like while on paper, if these policies are not implemented, right, it's actually useless. So, yeah, would you like to share some thoughts on that?
Right. So the project I was working on uh, took place in the frontier regions. So frontier regions are where human wildlife conflict arises a lot. And I was working in the Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary, where the elephant habitats and human inhabited spaces overlap a lot. And these are very major intelligent species, and a lot of conflict arises from these. So, and since elephants are huge creatures which cannot be collared easily, like big cats that we see, tigers and all. So, for surveilling their movements across regions, we use camera recorders, audio traps, and such. So, like when we used to go out in the mornings to check the recordings and retrieve camera recordings, we have come across instances where the cameras have been stolen by poachers, and or we've seen on ground damage that has happened in the villages. Um, but the thing is, elephants also are revered in our civilization, like Lord Ganesha. And but the thing is, on ground, when you talk to people, there are also grievances, which also brings out the irony that people do feel reverent towards those creatures, but are also afraid of them. And then you have to frame the policies in such a way that that satisfy both their beliefs. And yeah, so a lot of work that takes place in the lab is where you have to work in collaboration with the forest rangers, with the villagers over there, because in a way you have to protect the species and you have to protect the villagers living in those regions as well. And all this has to be in collaboration. Everyone has to um, like work with certain restraints. Like you cannot be unfair to anyone without angering
Right.
the other
Right.
party
Right.
over here.
Yes, there are, like as you mentioned, various stakeholders, like not just the animals themselves, but also like the communities that live in close proximity, who are essentially a part of the same ecosystem, right? Their livelihoods depend on it via agriculture, or foraging, or various other resources that they extract from the forest themselves. And like regarding this aspect of human and animal conflict, what do you think can be done better, like as far as community engagement is concerned? Definitely, like sensitizing those communities, but you also need to ensure that the concerns of the communities and their livelihoods are also taken into account. uh, in your experience, what do you think should be policy measures that can be taken up to ensure this? What do you think are the current gaps, which can be improved? Yeah.
Thing is, the urban landscape is very steadily increasing and is encroaching and fragmenting the habitat that the species occupy. So it is very essential to set up corridors or preserve the existing corridors as we expand our urban landscape. Um, See, the thing about human wildlife conflict is that for now it does not have any robust solution that we can come up with. We have to learn to coexist together and frame the policies in such a way that there is least possible encroachment within their habitat. And likewise, we use up the space that we have already in such a way that we don't harm the species that are coexisting with us.
Since you also brought up urbanization, that was an interesting point. Like human-animal conflict doesn't not just happens in rural areas, but also in urban areas. Say even in Mumbai and even in northeastern Guwahati, where I have been. So
Yeah.
now, when we talk of urbanizations, like as policy analysts, for the country to grow, we want more cities to also pop up. But I mean, wildlife finds its ways, and I think this is another totally different dimension to explore how that might intersect with it. Moving on. So when you talked about poachers also, right? So animal
Yeah.
trafficking. This, I mean, it's a huge issue. A lot of endangered
Mhm.
and near endangered animals are trafficked. It's to some extent, I also think it's responsibility of the society and the markets, also themselves to kind of ensure that this doesn't happen. At least when you work with elephants, right? Have any experiences with regards to these aspects of animal trafficking?
Like as I said, we have come across instances where we have seen poachers steal the camera traps because they did not want us to see what had happened that night. Or there have been instances, and the villagers also know about the activity of the poachers, and they do inform the forest officials. And I mean, yeah, it is surveillance does happen, but there are instances where they get away with it. So it also comes down to the community.
I see. And when we talk of policy enforcement, like various things, like recently we heard about this case in Chhattisgarh where the police officials stopped the train for almost 2 hours. Just because the elephant was birthing a calf just besides the tracks, right? And also before we joined this call, you told me something about some bird conservation activities during the recent escalation with Pakistan. Would you like to share that? I'll connect my question with it then. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like we had an ecology course in the last semester, and our professor had taught us about various conservation efforts that had taken place. And uh, just like after that, when the conflict between India Pakistan had started, I read this news which caught my eye because it mentioned. See, the great Indian bustard is a very critically endangered species in India, and there are less than 140 individuals, and most of them are in the state of Rajasthan. So, when this conflict had taken place, there were like unhatched eggs, which were very critical for the conservation efforts that was happening for the species. So, they were very carefully taken out to another facility in India because the adults could not be taken on such a long journey because conflicts arise within the species. So, nine of these eggs were taken away in safety. And after the conflict died down, yeah, they were artificially incubated and they hatched. So, the thing is, artificial incubation is a very important step that happens that can be done to rescue very critically endangered species and their continual survival. And policies regarding the conservation of these species is very critical in terms of human conflicts also, because these species, if we lose them, we it is very difficult to get them back.
Right. And we, we
Yeah.
are we are seeing that with some companies trying to build in extinct species, but yeah, that's a totally different
Yeah,
scientific.
yeah.
But yeah, why I wanted you to highlight that example of these birds during the conflict we had recently is because I believe in India there is still a great amount of sensitivity towards wildlife conservation. Like even in high times of such as conflict between an adversary. I mean, that was still a priority, right? To ensure that those bastard offsprings are secure. And
Yeah.
like also the recent example of Chhattisgarh, and we see many such examples, right, where communities and forest officials have engaged. So I think there is an optimistic approach, towards wildlife conservation, and also how we try to position ourselves on the global forum as some sort of a leader in sustainable development efforts, right? So I think there is some amount of positive hope that we're trying to uphold
Right.
the world these days, right? Yeah. Any other thoughts that you would like to share, like based on your experience or anything, what is it that you wish, like, like now as a researcher, and now that you are getting exposed to some of these on ground experiences, right? uh, as a future policy analyst, what would you like to contribute?
Yeah, so a lot of research on ecology does take place within the confines of a lab, but
Mhm.
it is very essential to get on ground and see how that research is translating and affecting the livelihood of the people who are living in the region.
Right.
And if you're talking about policy, then it is imperative that it starts with the people. If the people take charge, the policy will be very much better implemented. Like if we take the case of Hargila in Assam, uh, the bird Hargila, it is stereotyped against to be a harbinger of bad omens, and it started with a person, Purnima Devi Burman. She started the effort to restore the bird species, and she engaged the women in the area, and that's how the movement started. The people were involved in the project, and that's how the view of the species changed and the conservation efforts began. And that's how policy will be framed. Yeah.
That's a very interesting example. Just for the benefit of the audience, I would like to point out that the Hargila project, the Hargila bird in Assam is actually a scavenger bird, similar to vultures also. So it's an important, essential part of the ecosystem. Unfortunately, with this like, kind of urbanization, the bird kind of scavenges in garbage piles, and that's why it has a kind of a negative connotation. But Ms. Purnima Devi Balman, she tried to change that to, a grassroots level organization. So yeah, that's something very interesting. But apart from community engagements, I think, I mean, as a policy analyst who is trying to learn about the intersection of technology, technological interventions also play a huge role, and I think there needs to be also greater awareness among people of how the biological basis of life is very essential. While we understand these topics, like in my personal opinion, like biosecurity is a huge concern. Like, there are several resources in forests that we still need to understand. That can help us achieve our food security goals, our nutrition goals. A lot of research is happening. I think it's a separate topic, but it's essential that we are able to conserve these resources. Like, these are literally knowledge mines,
Right.
for, for food security and nutritional security for the future. It was nice talking to you, Meghna. Thank you for sharing your perspective. I hope our audiences here got to, got some insights based on your experiences, and we would love to hear from you again. And we would also like to see, your growth on the policy domain also as you move forward in your research career. So, thank you so much. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rajiv.
See you again. Yeah. Bye bye.